Hello and welcome to the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron and special guest, Evan Dyal. What's up, guys?
Always love it when we can hop on with Evan. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I'm super excited. And the series we've all anticipated for the whole year basically is here, Rockets, Warriors, and I'm super pumped.
Evan just hit it right there. We're going to be talking Western Conference Finals today, Warriors versus Rockets. I mean, this is something we probably anticipated almost since the Chris Paul trade. So to finally get this, it almost feels like the NBA Finals. But before we get started, just a quick reminder, check out the NBA Outlet on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, and now airing on Dash Radio. Also, check out Kory and Evan's pods. Evan does Players Watch, and Kory does Flex Hoops. But let's get started. Rockets, Warriors, season series 2-1. Obviously, both teams have handled all their playoff series from this point on. No real competition for both teams. We'll start with the Rockets side. What have we learned about the Rockets this postseason?
I mean, what we've learned is even when they're not firing on all cylinders, they can still get the job done. They 5 games against the Wolves, which is, a very good starting 5, I think. Obviously, they're a little thin. And then against a tough Jazz team, they beat them in 5 as well. We saw Chris Paul pick up James Harden when he was down. We saw James Harden do, vice versa when Chris Paul was down. We've mentioned this a couple of times, Nick, you and I. We haven't seen a signature Rockets win yet in the playoffs. We haven't seen them, firing on all cylinders. We haven't seen that huge offensive explosion yet. But we're learning that even when that's not happening, they can still get, the stops on defense, and they can still, cash out on some wins.
Yeah, I mean, similar thoughts. They've been an underrated defensive team all year, and they've been very good in the first 2 rounds. And that's helped carry, by their standards, some lesser offense. Harden in particular has not been shooting well. I think he's like only 40%, and he's getting to the free throw line less. So that's a little concerning. But Chris Paul is a boss, and he's just been so good, especially recently. The Game 5 against Utah was incredible. But you're right, there's not a lot of games where they've been firing all cylinders. The only one that comes close was that 50-point quarter against Minnesota. So I don't think they've reached their peak yet, but their defense is better than I think it gets credit for.
Yeah, defensively, they've been a lot better. They have some nice, role players that step up. Even James Harden has picked up his defense as well. You mentioned Chris Paul. He's been very efficient, 48% from the field in the playoffs, 37% from 3, under 2 turnovers a game. Clint Capella's been a boss. As well, the Rockets lead the postseason in turnovers per game, meaning they have the least amount of turnovers per game, which is impressive considering that has been a problem for them at times in the past. What do you guys think about Clint Capella in this series? Is he has he proven enough in the first 2 rounds that he can really attack the Warriors, or it's still they're going to force him off the floor?
I mean, the Warriors' game plan is going to be to try and get him off the floor. They're going to pull him away from the basket. They're going to ISO against him. They're going to try their best to make sure that he's a non-factor in this series. It's something the Warriors try to do against, I feel like, almost every big. If Capella can, hold his ground, if Capella can make sure that in, a 25 to 30 burst, his time frame on the court, that he can make a defensive impact, he can catch the lobs from CP3 and Harden, then I think he'll have some play time. But I think for sure the Warriors' strategy is going to be to get Capella off the floor.
Well, yeah, so I just wrote about this. The Warriors, they're not messing around now, and they start the death lineup, and that lineup has obliterated in the minutes. I think they're plus 40 in like 50 minutes. It's absurd. So Capella will have to hold his own on some switches, and it's going to be tough. But, I mean, I think for months now, D'Antoni has said he's the key to the series. He's going to have to be able to protect the rim, survive some switches, and kind of go at Draymond a bit. I think he can handle it to some degree. He's been very good recently, and I think he just keeps getting better and better. But it's really the key to the series, how many minutes he can play and how effective he is in those minutes.
Yeah, confidence has been one thing I think ascending for Capella, and that'll be interesting to keep an eye on in the series. In terms of the Rockets, what we've seen in the postseason, who's been the best role player, not including, James Harden, Chris Paul, and Clint Capella, who's been the best player on the team?
I think PJ Tucker probably. He's had a few games where he's been hitting the 3, and then defensively, he's the bull. He's the enforcer for that squad. And I think, he's been pretty solid. I don't know of any other role player I think that stood out as much as PJ Tucker.
I was going to say Tucker as well. And I mean, Utah in particular didn't even guard him, and he did a good job of just making them pay. He's hit enough open threes. And what's interesting is they're experimenting with him at center now as their kind of counter death lineup. So I'm excited to see that going forward.
Yes, that will be interesting, lining him up at center. He gives you some size, and obviously he's matched up with centers in the past a bit too. He has that real toughness down low. Moving on to the Warrior side, what have we learned about this team in the postseason?
Just a snap of the finger, anything can change.
Thanos over here.
Yeah, right. They have a snap of the finger, they can eliminate another team off the floor, and generally it's in the third quarter. They're really good. We know how good they are. We know what the Warriors have done in the playoffs the last several years. They've won 2 NBA titles in 3 years. This team is going to be for real. This team is going to give the Rockets an absolute handful. And we're seeing it. It's like at times that they pick straws. Klay Thompson had a really big first half in that game 5 to close out the Pelicans. And in the second half, you saw Curry and Durant start to pick up their offense. They're just so scary. They have so much talent. They have 2 MVPs. I saw today a tweet, and it was from a Warrior fan that said, everyone thought we weren't going to make the Western Conference Finals. No one had faith in us that we were going to, make it to the finals again. And every time they doubt us, here we are. And I'm thinking in my head, like, who's doubting you?
Dude, I would have picked the Warriors to get to the Western Conference Finals if Steph was out the whole postseason.
I agree. It's crazy. They've, and Draymond Green, we mentioned this yesterday, he's becoming efficient again, scoring wise. He wasn't hitting jump shots, and now he's hitting jump shots. And if Draymond Green is, an addition to that offense and scoring, that makes him 10 times scarier.
Yeah, they're firing on all cylinders. Green struggled during the regular season. He looks really good. Iguodala looks really good after a bad regular season. There's just zero room for error against them. Even if they have a bad possession, they have so many fail safes because Durant and Curry can just get their own shots so easily. And you're right, the snap of the finger. They could go nuclear for just a 2-3 minute stretch and stretch a 2-point lead to 14. And they always at least have one matchup that they can attack and that they like, and that's favorable. And they cause so much stress to opposing teams' defense. Honestly, I don't think there's ever been a team like it.
Yeah, I think you hit it right in the head, Evan. The fact is, I kind of peeked at your Western Conference preview that's going to be dropping on OTG in the next few days, is they just have so many guys that you can play great defense and they're still going to end up scoring. Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay to an extent, it hits a ton of tough shots. So having these guys, knowing that you can play great defense and they can still score and go on one of these crazy runs, it really is hard to defend them for 48 minutes. And Klay Thompson's a guy last year in the postseason who wasn't great. He wasn't shooting his best numbers. He was playing good D, but this year his numbers are definitely up shooting-wise, and that's going to even make them harder to defend. What do you guys think about the Warriors' rotations they've been throwing out? I feel like they've been less consistent, and then Steve Kerr has been willing to really change it up. For example, in the Spurs series, saw a lot of JaVale McGee. Barely saw him in the Pelican series. What are your thoughts on those adjustments Kerr's making as a coach with the lineups?
You never know what he's going to do. I think that's what makes him also a very good coach. Obviously, anytime you have this much talent, people can throw shade at your coaching abilities. They can say because you have so much talent, that's why you're in the position that you're in. But Kerr he adapts to who he's playing against. Truly, they started going with the death lineup with Anthony Davis on the floor. They didn't care about the size difference. They play on what they think will be they think that they will do what is best for them in the long run. No matter what the matchup is, they'll flip it. We may see more JaVale McGee this series because of Clint Capella than we did last series, because Steve Kerr is constantly changing what he's doing, and I think that's what makes him, a very good coach in this league.
Yeah, and against the Pelicans, they kind of shortened the rotation, and now it's just Looney, who barely played in the regular season, was the first big man along with David West, and then Cook and Livingston. I think he'll probably stay like that against the Rockets, maybe 9 players tops. But Looney may get less minutes. I'm not sure he'll be able to handle a lot of the Rockets pick and roll, so maybe just be West at center. But that's the luxury of the team. They have so many options to plug so many different holes, and it's the playoffs now, so they can even shorten the rotation. I love the move of starting the death lineup, and I think they do it again. I think Kerr's done a really good job.
Yeah, it's like they don't waste a roster spot on their team. Everybody can contribute in some way or another. You mentioned Looney, not big in the regular season, but he's been big in the playoffs so far. What are we thinking about Steph? Where do you think he's at health-wise, and how much is this longer break going to benefit him?
He's got to be in, either high 80s, low 90s. He's got to be near 100%, I think. And the break, obviously, it helps. Anytime you get an extra days off when you're coming back from an injury, he's been banged up most of the year. But I definitely think he's near 100%. He'll probably be 100% by tip-off of game one. Well, obviously everyone's got bumps and bruises, but he'll be as good as you can be in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I mean, the first couple games of the Pelican series, he still looked a little slow, but I think now, probably as Kory said, 85 to 90 range, and the rest is huge. Doesn't start till Monday, so by then I think he should be good to go, and that's scary.
It is. Steph and KD and Clay and all these guys just lighting it up. Who has faced tougher competition up to this point?
Rockets. I would have to say the Rockets. And
I'll also agree.
It's only honestly it's unfortunate because the Spurs are solid, coach team, but that first round matchup for the Warriors was a lot easier than the Rockets, in my opinion. That was the only because the last round, Pelicans, Jazz, both those teams have obstacles. So their second round was not easy. Their first rounds were just a little bit different to me.
Yeah, I think the Wolves are better than the Spurs, and even though it's close and you can make an argument for either, I would actually take the Jazz over the Pelicans. So I would say Rockets slightly, but mainly because of the first round.
Yeah, I think with the Jazz, it's just, facing that whole team where you face the Pelicans. Obviously, guys have stepped up, Drew Holiday, but Anthony Davis is just kind of like an issue on his own. So would you say that the Warriors have faced the best players so far and the Rockets have faced the best teams?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
I say that's fair to say. Yeah, for sure.
Consistency-wise, how important is it for the Rockets before we get even farther in the preview to, find some consistency? Like Kory kind of mentioned, Evan, you mentioned, they haven't had that amazing game yet. They had that huge quarter against the Minnesota where they put up 50 and they'd had some really big quarters, but 4 quarters, complete games. Do they have to have a complete game to beat the Warriors on every single minute, or are they going to be able to get away with one mediocre quarter and playing lights out for the 3 others?
Maybe for one game. You won't be able to sustain that. You can't have. I'm saying. I think for one game you may the game where the Warriors are not hitting. That would be the only game you can slack off. Overall, you're going to have to be at your very best.
Yeah, maybe one game, and having home court is huge, and I definitely think they have to win game one just because of pressure momentum. But overall, they're going to need to be more complete, especially their 3-point shooting.
Yeah, I agree. The 3-point shooting has been all over the place. I think we'd all agree that these are the 2 best teams heading into this matchup, and this is kind of almost like the NBA Finals a round early.
I mean, to me, it is the NBA Finals. I think whoever wins this series, and I don't know if this is a hot take, I think it's going to be the NBA champions. I don't think any team in the East has a chance. I think it's between these two.
Agreed. Whoever wins this series, I think, will smoke Cleveland.
And the numbers back it up. Both these teams lead the postseason in net rating. Warriors at 9.5 and the Rockets at 9. But moving on to our next segment, how can the Rockets attack the Warriors in the series? Where can they, find a weakness if there is any?
I mean, for the Rockets, it's what they did all year. It was spacing the floor, a lot of ball movement. James Harden penetrating, dishing out to an open shooter. Chris Paul in the pick and roll. They really just need to space out the Warriors the best they can. On defense, like you guys mentioned, Durant, Thompson, and Curry, they hit tough shots. They hit shots that if I shot, 10 times, I'd probably make them 1 time. They are freaks. They are very good offensive machines. So defensively, you just want them to shoot, I guess, because you don't want them to attack the basket. But offensively, I think you just want to space them out the best you can.
Yeah, I'm not there's a specific matchup to attack. It's just more their guys have to win their battles, and we know what they are. Harden has to win some isolations against Clay. Chris Paul is going to have to rain mid-range fire over Draymond Green. They're going to have to win some of the switches when Green's on both of them. We know what the matchups are, and both can go either way. Just the Rockets, their great players are going to have to be great. And I know that's kind of simple, but I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, it was definitely tough to find one specific area of weakness. I mean, the only thing, the Warriors have some of these stretches where they get kind of lackadaisical and they turn the ball over. They don't run their offense properly. They rely on guys going ISO. I think for Houston, they really just have to attack. When they have one of these bad first quarters, one of these bad, little runs, you really need to make sure you take advantage because like Kory hinted at earlier, in the third quarter, they're just going to start on fire. So you need to make sure you have a lead and you take advantage of any flaws that they show during the game. Turnovers have been an issue for Golden State at some point. So I think that'd be an area where I look to kind of capitalize if they do turn the ball over. On the defensive end, what do we expect the Rockets to do? Are they just going to, like Kory said, keep them out of the paint, just force them to shoot?
It just sucks because you can't put any defensive focus on any player. Like in certain series, you can trap somebody and you can trap Curry for a game and it changes, but you can't do that you can't really do that with the Warriors.
Transition might be another place where they can kind of attack, but I don't know.
Well, that's interesting because the Rockets have been a pretty slow pace this year, but you also touch on the turnovers, and if Warriors do have a weakness, it's that, and the Rockets are good at protecting the ball. So the Rockets are definitely going to capitalize on some of the Warriors' turnovers, or they have to. But defensively, you're going to, as I meant, Tucker at center, Mamamute, I think, is going to have to play huge minutes. I think he's their best option on Durant, and they have to get physical and see how the refs are calling, and hopefully they let him get away with a little bit more. But it's going to take a lot of great individual defensive efforts from Curry or Paul on Curry. And Paul's at least one of the few point guards who could at least hang with Curry. So, I mean, they have some answers, but it's just going to take, above their regular from each of those guys to get this job done.
Yeah, they're all going to have to play, take it to another level. And like you said, Evan, see what the refs are going to let you play with. I think if I'm Houston, I come out and I play as physical as possible from the start and kind of allow force the refs not to cause many fouls. Because, we think about teams like the Miami Heat or the previous Chicago Bulls teams with Joakim Noah and Derrick Rose. They're kind of teams that foul every play, but they get away with it because they do it so much. So if I'm Houston, I'm really trying to bug Steph, trying to bug KD, trying to bug Clay, just trying to get them out of their zone. Who needs to have a bigger series from the Rockets side, James Harden or Chris Paul? And this goes for both ends of the floor.
James Harden. I think it has to be James Harden for the simple fact where as he's been putting up pretty good numbers, but the efficiency isn't there. He can't be shooting, what was he, 8 for 22 last game? He can't have games like that. James Harden has to be MVP level. Well, soon to be, should be MVP level stats they was all regular season. He needs to be efficient. Defensively, the way he's played the last two series, that's fine. He's been really tenacious on getting some loose, poking out some balls, getting open in transition with some steals. So on that end, he needs to continue that effort. But offensively, he just has to be more efficient.
I'll go Harden on offense, Paul on defense. It hasn't been Harden's best playoff so far, and I think he's going to need to at least average at least 30, which I know sounds ridiculous for them to win this series.
I think it's fair.
And because it's going to be a track meet no matter how good these teams are in defense. And Harden's going to need to get to the free throw line more, and it'll be interesting to see how they call in on that side too. His mark is usually 10 a game if there's good. He needs to hit, his step back threes in isolation. But then on defense, he's going to hide on Iguodala. He's going to hide on David West. So he won't be as important. It'll be Paul on Curry. And if he can, get Curry in the 20 to 25 point range rather than 30 to 35 points, the Rockets have a chance.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think James is going to have to put up 30-plus points a game, and I think that shooting percentage needs to get closer to 50 than 40. And as well, the step-back three, I think, maybe might be his most important shot in this series because you can't really defend it when he's hitting it on point like we saw sometimes in the postseason. It just hasn't been super consistent. Moving to the Warriors side, where can the Warriors attack the Rockets?
So the Warriors, for the Warriors, it's literally what we mentioned before, move the ball. You guys mentioned how a way to stop for the Rockets to attack the Warriors is to disrupt their ball movement. For the Warriors on offense, you want that ball when we kicking. Draymond Green was phenomenal these past two rounds in moving the ball around, especially with Curry, not being there for the first round. And I think, especially with Curry being back now, that ball is going to fly around. That ball when the Warriors are playing, it is so fun to watch because it seems to always find the right man. You know, the extra pass is always made. The wide open guy in the corner seems to always be right there. So for the Warriors, it's just space out, tear apart the Rockets. If Clint Capella is out there, pull him away from the basket. Put Durant on him in an isolation, you know, drive or dish out to one of your magnificent shooters in the corner. I think for the Warriors, it's pretty much their entire offensive strategy. And plus, if they get out in transition, then it's game over.
Yeah, you know, it's attack the mismatches, and that starts with Harden. So you can see Iguodala at some times as a ball handler, run some pick and rolls for him. Just, you know, put as many Harden pick and rolls as possible. Eventually he'll mess up. And then Kory, run him off the ball, tons of screens, try to get Paul in some cheap foul trouble. That would absolutely kill the Rockets. And then it's, if Gerald Green plays, you got to attack him immediately. And then it's Capella by either pulling him away from the basket or trying to get him into some foul trouble, because without him, the Rockets are in some doo-doo.
Yeah, definitely. And what do we think about the mental, game in this series? Can the Warriors kind of win this because they have the experience? They've obviously been to the finals 3 straight times. Houston, on the other hand, James Harden, Chris Paul, a lot of pressure to get to the finals and kind of get over that hump. They've been known as, playoff chokers, even though I don't agree with that. Do you think the mental game is going to be a big factor for the Warriors?
I think the mental aspect of sports is always a factor that plays some sort of role, especially in a game one. I think a game one really establishes the mental effect that the series will have, or a team can have in a series.
Yeah, I think it's huge, and I think game one is massive. If the Rockets lose, it's kind of like what happened to the Raptors if they lose a tough game one. The pressure is just so on them to win game two, and then things could get ugly. So I think there's more pressure. I mean, the Warriors are experienced, and the Rockets have talked it all, and now it's here. So I think there's a little more, I guess, pressure on them, and I just trying to trust the Warriors resolve more.
Just getting off the Warriors for a second, can Houston win a game in Oracle?
I mean, if they want to win this series, they have to, right? I mean,
well, they don't. They have home court, so they can win all the games at home.
Yeah,
and
well, I'm saying that they're going to have to win a game on Oracle if they want to win in the series. Obviously, both these teams too are really good on the road. I think they have to at least take one from Oracle. I don't see either one of these teams losing every game on the road, or losing every game at home, or losing a game at home, I should say, or whatever. I don't know where I am.
No, I agree, because I think the Warriors will likely take one of the two at first, but I think the Rockets are capable of winning one at Oracle. They're one of the few teams that do it just because they have enough firepower and they hit enough threes. They can do it.
Getting back to where the Warriors can attack the Rockets, do you think, offensively, they're kind of like you mentioned, Evan and Kory, attack James Harden, force him into switches. Now on the other end of the floor, what do we think they can do to attack them?
I think you want to smother James Harden. You want the other guys to beat you. It's kind of what we saw. I mean, for me, like watching the Pacers, they completely took Victor Oladipo out. Obviously, Chris Paul there, it's a little bit different. But I think for example, Chris Paul had 8 threes last game. If I'm the Warriors, I will be perfectly okay with letting Chris Paul shoot 10 threes a game. I am completely okay with that. If Chris Paul is going to hit 8 threes out of 10 in a game to beat me and have 10 assists and no turnovers, I'll take that. Because I personally don't think Chris Paul can do that on his own in a 7-game series, to win a 7-game series. And James Harden obviously played poorly. James Harden, I think, is the X factor. Obviously, he's a superstar. But I think if the Warriors, trap him, they are very physical with him. I mean, of course, if he's getting to the line, which he's so good at, then it changes things. But if they can keep him off the foul line while being physical, then I think that's the best route for the Warriors.
Yeah, it's a good point about Chris Paul and making him a scorer rather than a passer. And I think he's going to have to score more and take more shot attempts than he usually would like to. And that's going to be big. He's going to have to average probably around 25 instead of, the usual like 12 assist games. And then it's just staying home on the shooters, make Ariza put it on the floor, make Tucker, Mamute test their playmaking abilities, see if they can make the extra pass. And then, Harden, he's going to get a lot of pressure, and he'll get some double teams at all, and they'll test the other player's ability to make a play for sure.
Yeah, and I think because James Harden too has been so, he's shooting what is he shooting 40% right now in the playoffs.
Yeah, around
Yeah.
there.
So he already doesn't have a ton of rhythm, and I think if you're really aggressive with him early and you're bothering his shot and he still can't get into any rhythm, that's the best route for the Warriors to take.
Moving over to key matchups, where are the matchups of the series that you're going to keep an eye on? Obviously, you could probably go through the entire starting lineup, but go, your most important one to start.
It's tough for me. I think the first one's going to be what I think is going to be a three-headed Rockets defensive effort against Kevin Durant, which is going to be Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, and Abalamute. I think those three are going to be on one of those, PJ Tucker, I need you to be physical on Kevin Durant. Trevor Ariza, I need you to be all around, do your thing on Kevin Durant. And then Abalamute, use your length to try and, disrupt Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant's going to get a lot of different defenders at him. They're going to try and throw off his rhythm. They're going to try and do different things to him to kind of throw him off his game. So for me, that's the biggest matchup I'm looking at is how the Rockets can try and slow down Kevin Durant, and if Kevin Durant can just, overpower everyone he faces.
It's what we touched on earlier. It's Clint Capella for me. Can he get the ball deep enough in the paint and then use his size and length to finish over Draymond Green and be able to punish the death lineup enough inside? And then can he hang on the other end? And then with the Warriors, when you're guarding them, if Draymond and Iguodala hit threes, you lose. So it's really just how many threes those guys can hit.
What do we think about the James Harden versus Klay Thompson matchup? Obviously, Klay's been known as a very good defender his whole career, pretty much. James Harden, you mentioned, Kory, he's already been kind of out of the rhythm. Is this matchup going to be a really big factor in the series?
For sure. I think it's going to be huge, but I'm not sold that it will just be Klay Thompson. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, Kevin Durant get some time on James Harden too, or an extended period of time on James Harden, especially, if James Harden starts cooking on Klay, let's say, he's got like 20 and a quarter on Klay. And then they put Durant on him because Durant has the length and Durant can still keep up with him with speed. But yeah, I definitely think Klay Thompson, who we know is a world-class defender, he's going to have his hands full. And, James Harden's in for a really tough series.
Yeah, Thompson, I think, will get the starting assignment on him and the bulk of the minutes, but they'll throw multiple defenders. Iguodala will get a lot of time on him. Durant, Draymond on switches. Thompson's good enough that he could at least make Harden work, but if Harden can't win that matchup, the Rockets are done.
Yeah, that's why I think it's going to be very important. We've seen Klay not shut guys down, but he's, had Kyrie and put him in tough situations at times. He's also been scored on by Kyrie a ton too in finals appearances. So I think that's going to be something to really keep an eye on. And I think, you guys have hinted at it a lot. James Harden's ability to draw fouls in the series is going to be huge because if you can disrupt the rotation, we mentioned how they have so much depth, but there's 4 guys in this team that are different from the rest. And if you can get one of them out of the game, foul trouble wise, at least take him out for a quarter, an extended stretch, I think that's going to be huge. So I think James Harden's ability to draw fouls is going to be something to keep an eye on throughout the series.
Especially if he's, struggling shooting wise, and the Warriors are going to do their best to disrupt his offensive rhythm. If his jump shot's not falling, the greatest thing about James Harden is he can still get to the free throw line 15, 20 times.
And that can get you going.
Sure. Yeah. It's like a shooter, shooter sees the ball go down one time, everything can change.
And CP3 and Curry, we kind of touched on already, but I think that's going to be another huge series. Obviously, Steph's health, we think he'll be 100%, but if he's playing lights out, it's going to be tough for Chris Paul to defend him because we've already seen, Curry put Chris Paul on a twister pad.
Yeah, numerous times.
So it's going to be tough. I mean, how do you think they're going to deal with Curry?
I mean, there's some guys you just say we're going to let them beat us and we got to worry about everybody else. And it's tough because the Warriors have 2 of those guys. But, I mean, they're just going to have Chris Paul do the best he can. And maybe they'll throw on some double teams. But, with Curry, it's one of those things where you're just going to, kind of have to eat your poison. Or take your poison, I should say.
Yeah, most of the time Paul will be on him and the Rockets will say, do the best you can. And I think he's capable of at least making Curry work. The only other people who probably maybe get a shot on him is Ariza or Mamute, but Ariza's probably not quick enough. So maybe Mamute has some chops for a little bit at stretches, but that's about it.
It's a 4-headed monster that's really tough to defend. But bench-wise, where are we looking at this bench matchup? Who's got the advantage? Who needs to play big?
I think I actually personally like the Rockets bench a little bit more. But what I like about the Warriors bench overall, and most importantly, is they have a lot of veterans and a lot of guys who have been here before. A lot of guys who I just trust down like a stretch. Obviously Iggy's been starting, but Iggy, Sean Livingston, David West. These are guys who know how to play basketball. They play really good basketball. They all know their roles. So I'm rolling with the Warriors bench. I think if their bench comes in and gives them some steady minutes. Obviously, David West has been really consistent for them. I don't know. I think the Warriors bench does more of the little things. As like the Rockets bench, I think has more firepower, but the Warriors bench, I think, can make more of an impact
and more consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're more consistent. And the Rockets, I mean, how Eric Gordon holds up on defense will be huge in this series. If Gerald Green's even playable in this series,
he's been pretty bad in the playoffs so far. He hasn't found any offensive rhythm.
Yeah. So, I mean, those two are question marks. The only one I really trust is Mamute, who is a perfect anti-Warrior defender, actually, because his ability to switch. But besides that, there's not much. I mean, they're not even playing Ryan Anderson. Yeah, so I'll go the Warriors just because David West and Livingston are just so solid.
Yeah, and Quinn Cook has been pretty good too. Like, I have not minded him on the floor at all. Just the ability to hit some threes, especially when they're playing some of these guys like Livingston and West who don't have the three-point shot. But deciding factors in the series, what factors, we can go one at a time, that are going to be determined about who wins?
Deciding factor. Evan, lead us off for this one. I got to think for a second.
I got one right off the bat. 3-point percentage, I think, is going to be huge. I mean, both teams are amazing 3-point shooters, but shooting is a thing where, good shots, bad shots, it doesn't really matter at some point. It's about who's just going to be making them.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that and say for the Rockets, can the Mamute, Tucker, Ariza trio play good enough defense in multiple positions while probably hitting, I would say, 10 threes between the three of them per game, at least?
For me, I don't know if this is a weird. I'm going to go with efficiency. I think the Rockets have to be efficient.
Efficient.
I think because of their two stars in particular, those guys have to lead away. And, with the Warriors, what you're going to get. You have three guys who are probably going to score over 20 in every game and two guys who can score over 35, in the snap of a finger. I feel like that reference is going to come up so often because the Avengers is just like so imprinted in my mind.
And I've already seen way too many of the, sorry for spoilers, but disappearing of, playoff teams after they lose. Like, it's getting a little old now.
Yeah, it is. But I think for the Rockets, they need to be efficient. They need to shoot, well above 45% and near 50% if they're really going to have a chance in the series.
What else you got for us, Evan, deciding factor-wise?
Well, I mean, we already talked about the Capella stuff enough. I'm very interested to see how Tucker holds up at center and I would not be super surprised if they may even consider starting Mamute one day. And I mean, I feel like the Rockets still have like one thing up their sleeve that they're planning. And I wouldn't even, if the Warriors do play a traditional center like McGee or Pachulia, I wouldn't be scared to dust off Ryan Anderson.
Yeah, true. And he could just give you a stretch where he knocks down a few threes, and that's a game changer. I think turnover is something we hinted at earlier, and it kind of gets on Kory's efficiency point. I think the turnover battle is going to be huge. Golden State, like I mentioned, at times has been bad turning over the ball. Houston, on the other hand, has done a great job protecting the ball in the postseason. I think that's an area where Houston really needs to dominate if they want to win this series.
Absolutely.
Coaching. What do we think about the coaching in this series? Obviously, Mike D'Antoni has taken a lot of hate in the past for his lack of adjustments, and Steve Kerr, obviously, his coaching career has been pretty spotless almost.
I mean, I lean in favor of Steve Kerr, and that's only because Steve Kerr has been here and done it before. We've seen D'Antoni have his playoff struggles. We know that Greg Popovich owns him. Luckily, he's not dealing with Greg Popovich, but I lead in favor of Steve Kerr. I just think he can adjust to a game a lot better. Not that D'Antoni can't, but we know how D'Antoni likes his offense. He likes it fast, likes it up tempo. The Warriors, they obviously enjoy playing up tempo, but they can really pick you apart in almost any style they can want to play. They're just so versatile.
Yeah, I would lead Kerr slightly too, even though I think both are excellent coaches. And I know D'Antoni won the year before, but I actually thought he was better this year He got the Rockets to play slower, more isolation. He was willing to trust them more, and I thought he did a really good job after Utah won Game 2 in adjusting their pick and roll coverages. So I think he's really good. It just, Kerr has the experience and just, frankly, just a few more options.
Yeah, he does. He has the better roster. And I think you're right. D'Antoni's done a great job this year incorporating a lot of new faces, including Chris Paul, a dominant ball handler with James Harden. That's kind of almost been flawless. What do we think about effort? I think effort in this series is going to be huge. Like Evan hinted at early, can they win their one-on-one matchups for Houston? Are you concerned at all about, the Rockets' effort in the series? Because there was times in the Jazz and even the Minnesota series where they weren't putting it in 100%. And the Warriors obviously done that, but they can kind of get away with it because they have the championships. But Houston, they've had stretches where transition D wasn't amazing. Are you concerned at all with their effort in the series?
I mean, I'm slightly concerned only because, like you mentioned, this is a Warriors team that can beat you in so many ways. Taking a possession off that leads to voice crack there. Taking a possession off that leads to a wide open Curry 3 or a wide open Clay 3 or a wide open Durant 3 or a wide open Draymond 3. Any type of possession that ends, because you're being lazy or you give a ball over on lazy, you don't get back. You can't be lazy against the Warriors. So I definitely think that's got to be some concern. Obviously they were playing against different teams. Maybe they just didn't feel like they had to bring in every play. Against the Warriors in this conference finals, you have to bring in every play.
Yeah, I mean, their effort has not been great the first 2 rounds, but I still trust that they'll bring it for this series. I mean, it's what they wanted all year. They're home. They'll have a ton of energy in that building. I think they'll definitely be lights out in terms of effort. I mean, they have to be to have a chance.
Before we get into predictions, give me a hot take or something that's going to happen in the series that people will not expect.
Ooh, hot take that no one's going to expect.
Dig deep for this.
Steph Curry's going to have one game where he drops over 50.
Oh.
Whoa.
One explosion. One I'm 100% on back game.
Mamute will be starting by Game 3.
Interesting. I really like his matchup, like you mentioned, Evan, on KD, and I could definitely see Steph getting super hot, especially with the amount of threes. What is going to be the highest amount of three-pointers attempted in one game in this series combined?
Combined?
Jesus.
I'm going to say over 75. I can't give you an exact number, but I'll say over 75, which isn't even that much for them.
All right, Evan, how many of those over the 75 are they going to make?
It'll probably be the game where they're hitting them, right? So they're going to hit like 45 of them or 50 of them.
I could see a 35 game, 40, that range.
Yeah, I could see it. Both teams getting close to 20 on each side, dropping threes, and there's just a ton of guys that can get hot. But now the question that we've all been waiting for, give me your prediction. Who's going to win this series?
So all year, this is now the build-up. So all year, I've said this, and I've stuck to it, that the Rockets are the biggest threat to the Golden State Warriors. I even predicted them to win on Full Access Hoops. And then I've been thinking about it and talking about it, and I don't think the Rockets win. I don't think they have enough. I think they're one player away. I think they're just not fully there yet. I think I love James Harden and Chris Paul together. I just don't think they're at that level yet to dethrone the Warriors. And I think the Warriors are too good. I'm going with Warriors in 5.
Ooh. What about you, Evan?
This is the biggest threat the Durant Warriors have faced, I think, by far. And, it's been the series we've all anticipated, and the Rockets designed their whole offseason getting personnel capable. But the Warriors are the better team, I think, on both ends. 4 stars is greater than 2 in the playoffs. I think it'll be tough, a very entertaining competitive series. I went Warriors in 6.
Yes, it is. It's tough. And like you guys had mentioned, the build-up's been there. This is a team that's been designed to beat the Warriors. And I want to pick the Rockets so bad. I want to pick the Rockets in 7 so bad, but
Same.
I'm going to have to go with Evan.
It's funny. I too want to – I so badly want to see the Rockets win.
I tried to convince myself writing it, and I couldn't do it.
Just thinking about it, and I've been thinking about it, and I've been thinking about it, and I'm just trying to think in my head what scenario that doesn't include injuries can Houston outplay them and win 4 games in the series, and I just don't see it. I can't even pick Houston, and I can't even pick Golden State in 7 because I think the Warriors are going to end it in 6. It's just there's too many good players. It would take an ice cold shooting stretch from one of the Warriors, big 3, or it would take an injury, and we never want to wish that on anybody. So I have to go with Golden State to return to the finals once again.
And even though I said 5, I wouldn't be surprised if all of these games came down to the wire. I just think, like you just mentioned, Nick, the Warriors just have so much, and I just don't know if the Rockets can match it or be hot enough in the series to out firepower. As Evan mentioned, 4 stars to 2.
And it's just guys like, Kevin Durant, maybe you get him to have 3 bad games. He's not going to have 4 bad games. You know what I mean? And the same thing for Steph and Clay. These guys might have a couple bad games, but they have so many options and so many resources to kind of go to that it's just like, their bad games aren't even that bad because they have somebody else stepping up. Houston, if Chris Paul and James Harden aren't playing lights out, it's going to be hard for them to really win 4 games. So, and it's in the Warriors, it's not like they're a bad defensive team, so it even makes it tougher.
Yeah,
MVP of the series.
Mission Impossible. Oh,
yeah, Mission Impossible.
MVP.
I say he's going to drop 50 points, so I guess
better pick Steph.
Steph Curry is going to be my MVP. I think he's going to average probably right around 27 or 28 per game. I don't really care about the rebounds and assists. That's not really his style of play anyways. And I think he's going to shoot well above 40% from 3 and 50% from the field. I think he's going to be tremendous.
I'll also go Steph. By efficiency, he was the best offensive player in basketball this year when he was healthy.
No surprise there.
And he's just insane, and there's no one else like him. And I think now that he's close to 100%, even though Paul's a good defender, I think you'll have a huge series.
I'm just going to be different. I could easily see the Steph scenario. I'm going to go with Kevin Durant because I feel like he's been a guy who's been quietly dominating in the postseason. That his mid-range shot, his ability to just shoot over so many defenders. Yeah, Ba Mute has a little bit more size to match up with him. But I was watching, after the game between the Pelicans and Warriors, and KD is taller than Anthony Davis, if not the same size. He's just so damn tall, and he's all over the place, getting screens from all types of players. And if Steph's hitting his shots, it's just going to make KD's life so much easier. So I'm going to go with KD. But anything else, guys, before we get out of here?
Man, I really hope the Rockets can pull it out, but God bless it. I'm so looking forward to this series. This is going to be a lot of fun, no matter how it ends, who wins. Enjoy this series because basketball may not be as fun next round.
It might not. You are correct. If you had let's go into the scenario. One more question. The scenario that the Rockets do win this series without injury, what has to happen from the Houston side to win this series?
For Houston to win this series, it goes back to me to efficiency. You have to be shooting at a high percentage. Like Evan, you said it best. 4 stars against 2. If you're down stars, the only way to win is to be more efficient, to be cleaner. Don't turn the ball over. You have to play almost a perfect game of basketball to defeat the Warriors, or the Durant Warriors, I should say. And that's the Rockets' task ahead.
You can make a checklist. Harden
I think that
30, Paul 25. The shooters have to at least hit 10, force a lot of turnovers. Like it's a laundry list.
I think the 2 factors for me, I think 3-point percentage wise, they would have to shoot 10%, probably higher than the Warriors from 3, and they're going to have to win the turnover battle on a daily basis of at least 5. I think getting yourself those extra possessions and hitting those extra threes are your best chance because, like we said, the Warriors are pretty unstoppable. But that wraps it up for today. Evan, Kory, thank you for hopping on. As always, thank everybody for listening. Check out the NBA Outlet on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, and Dash Radio. Also, give us your thoughts on Twitter at OTG Basketball. Let us know if you agree, who's going to win the series and whatnot.